and record. Thank you very much for that reminder, Rebecca.
Sure.
Okay, we can see your screen. Did you want to ask people to read?
Sure. And for those of you who are joining us and are not familiar, this is our grounding statement for Vibrant Hawaii. So what we like to do is start off by asking folks to read. I think there are 6 parts to it, 1 part each. So maybe Sherry, could you lead us off with this?
Okay. Vibrant Hawaii is a growing community that commits to individual and collective ʻauamo kuleana to increase equitable opportunities to build wealth, an abundant reservoir of human, social, natural, and financial capital that we contribute to and draw upon.
Thanks, Sherry. How about Kalehua?
Our kuleana is to convene conversations so that all va'a can travel toward a common goal, build community awareness, will, and action from the foundation of our shared values, shift deficit narratives, systems, and policies that perpetuate poverty and inequity, and implement strategies that are developed and resourced by the community and reflect Native intelligence.
Thanks, Kalehua. And Camilla, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, my video's off, sorry. We value equity and belonging, and we demonstrate this by being willing to let go of our assumptions and biases about each other, speaking up when we recognize barriers that prevent us from participating, prospering, and reaching our full potential, promoting full family engagement and participation, and raising our own and our collective belief that wealth, abundance, and prosperity is not a pie.
And actually don't see your names well. Shireen, are you able to read this next one?
Yes, sorry, I keep talking to myself. Forgetting to take it off of mute. We value aloha, and we demonstrate this by acknowledging that aloha is unique to Hawaii. It is from this place. By valuing aloha, we value the vast and unique genius of the people of Hawaii, and we prioritize the knowledge, skills, and solutions of its people, recognizing that aloha is an action modeled to us by our environment, and we validate its aloha through aloha aina and our willingness to suffer a little so that no one has to suffer a lot.
Thank you. And then we have, actually, I'm sorry, I didn't get to meet you, but you're the one that said that you worked at in independent schools.
Oh, Lane.
Lane? Okay.
Lane.
Hi.
I know it looks like Len, but it's Lane.
Lane, would you read this one for us?
We value ʻauamo kuleana, and we demonstrate this by a commitment to empowerment rooted in our belief that everyone has skills and abilities, but needs circumstances and opportunities to express them, promoting language that recognizes a person's abilities and shared ownership and accountability. If any of us stumbles, we all fall because we are all connected.
Thank you. And then there's one more, I think, or that's it. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. So I also asked if Sherry could share just to kind of give context, because we do have people who have not been in the Transformational Learning Group with us today. So if you could give a little context of what our group has been talking about before we jump into talking to Katina about what they're doing on Molokai, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay. Sure. So as Julie mentioned, that we all really started off as one stream, the education stream as a whole. And then as a group, we started looking at different aspects of education through the Aloha Plus Challenge. And then we ended up dividing up into 4 substreams. So our substream is transformational learning. And when we first started with this, there were so many different ways we could go. And we spent a great deal of time trying to narrow down, what do we mean by transformational learning? And I'm just going to go ahead and share now just kind of what we've come up with of what we mean when we say transformational learning. And I have it here that we're open to another title. So we're actually, not only do we have to determine what is transformational learning, we're not even sure that that's the best term, but that's what we have right now. So, oops, my slide is not moving. Okay, but what we have kind of narrowed to and determined is when we say transformational learning, we're talking about a holistic process that places students at the center of their own active and reflective learning experiences. These experiences help them to develop beyond disciplinary skills and expand their perspectives of their relationships with self, others, community, and environment. And this is a shift in a historic prioritizing of what we know to our prioritizing of how people see themselves and the world around them, which empowers them to act and to transform their world. And to think about, so what do we do with this? Our hope is that kind of as a result of broadening the opportunities for transformational learning on Hawaiʻi Island, that what we want to end up with is that we want Keiki on Hawaiʻi Island to love going to school because 1, they feel a sense of belonging. 2, they know that their unique knowledge, experiences, and identities are valued. And 3, because their learning is meaningful to them. And so we're in the process right now of determining, so where do we go from here? If that's the island we want, if that's what we want to create, how do we get there? And so right now we're toying with our first action step being that we want to partner with principals in particular or other educational leaders to highlight teachers who are innovating and thriving. We want to amplify those stories to encourage, inspire, and instill courage in other principals, teachers, and parents and other educational leaders to adopt transformational learning opportunities for their students, which of course brings us to why we're gathering today and the guests that we've invited to be with us. So I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Sherry. Camilla, are you able to just kind of negotiate introductions of everybody so Katina knows who she's talking to?
Okay. I'm having some connection problems from my end, so if I'm choppy, someone else just stop and take over for me. But let's start with Julie.
Julie Maurer. I oversee the Center for Community Engagement at UH Hilo. So my background is in education, started in second language learning and ESL students and international students in higher ed, and then really shifted and did my doctorate on the relationship between higher education and community. And that's kind of where my passion is at this time, at how we can work together and support one another and build student success by engaging community further. And that's enough for me.
Thanks, Julie. Rebecca.
Hi, Katina. Thank you for being here. And hi, everybody. My name is Rebecca Choi. I am in Hilo, Hawaii. I have 3 young girls, and I have a background from finance, entrepreneurship, nonprofit management. But what brings me to transformational learning is really as a mother, just concerned for how our keiki are being engaged and empowered. And one of the projects I'm working on right now, it's called Keiki Heroes. If you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. But it's a small project that we're doing also to help empower our keiki during the pandemic. And glad to meet you all.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's not a small project, by the way. She's being very humble. Sherry, would you like to go next?
Aloha, everyone. My name is Sherry, and I am an independent social justice educator, and that's been my field for my entire career. And I'm very privileged to focus on right now, particularly faculty development around issues of inequality, systems of oppression, and also provide educational opportunities for high school and college students about racism, sexism, classism, and all that fun stuff.
Thank you, Sherry. I guess I'm the last one from Transformational Learning. So Kamala Souza, Program Coordinator for Hokupa'a, which is a West Hawaii-based partnership with different organizations. I guess I come to the transformational learning stream from a sort of systems change perspective. And I really tried to work to align different partners to facilitate an environment where, you know, these kinds of transformational learning opportunities can really be possible and thrive. I'm going to go ahead and let our other guests introduce themselves, or you can pass if you want to just be a quiet observer. So Brianna.
Aloha, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Brianna Sanchez. I am a high school teacher at Keao High School in East Hawaii on Hawaii Island. I'm a veteran educator, and I teach this year primarily a social emotional learning class called Transitions to High School for 9th graders. As far as I know, we're the only high school that has come back in a face-to-face blended learning situation, and I'm on my way home from work right now, so forgive me for being in the car. So I come to this work being a product of Hawaii DOE myself, and coming here to rural Hawaii and hoping to do everything that I possibly can to make positive impacts in the community in which I live and teach. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Lane?
Yes, I think I've already introduced the fact that I'm a marriage of public and independent school education. I came to Hawaii 40 years ago to get a degree in Chinese history and anthropology. Later on, UCLA, a degree in curriculum and instruction. I have been the head of a middle school, Seabury Hall, for 21 years, but I was at Seabury Hall for 31 years. So my age group is grades 6 through 12, but really 6, 7, and 8. I love 13-year-olds, which puts me in a category of my own. And transformational learning is everything when it comes to middle schoolers, is it not?
Thank you. Kalehua?
Aloha kako. I'm Kalehua Kukahiko. I live in Laupahoehoe, but I work here in Honoka'a. I'm coming to this meeting partly with my professional plus mom hat. So my work at the community college, so Co-Education Center is the education center of Hawaii Community College. So we're the tiny rural campus that's doing a lot of, hopefully, after multiple meetings, a lot more innovative work, bridging between DOE community partners. We just had some great meetings to look at ag pathways and just trying to think outside the box. So mahalo, I am being Niele. I usually am in the Aina-based education stream of Vibrant Hawaii. And when I saw this opportunity, I was really excited. So mahalo for opening it up. I don't think I would have saw the email otherwise. And when I saw Principal Soares and the innovation playlist, I cleared my afternoon. So mahalo.
Mahalo. Shireen? Oh. Shireen, you're on mute.
See, I told you all I like to talk to myself. Okay, wait, now I'm having issues with the camera. Okay, well, never mind. I've been having issues with the camera for a while. Sorry. My name is Shireen Haliniak. I work for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I work in the research department. My focus is education. So I just come as I just want to listen in to see what's going on. Consider I've been kind of out of the Vibrant Hawaii anything because it, my email issues. So I'm actually really excited about this. I watched the video and somebody made me cry because she was crying on the video. But that is so exciting. I originally, I got my bachelor's in psychology from UH Hilo. I had all intentions of becoming a teacher. And this route is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted the children to be in charge of their own thinking, of their own education. I wanted them to own it. And then No Child Left Behind happened, and that kind of put a damper on that. So I'm originally from Kona. I born and raised in Kona, lived in Hilo. I just moved back from Honolulu after 12 years. So I've been all over the place and I've seen a lot from city life to country, and love being back in the country. I live in Puna now. but I come to observe. I want to see if there's anything I can do from my end, and I will be eager to hear what's on the agenda today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just gonna.
Okay, I think I got everybody.
I think so. Okay. So before we go into our conversation, I just want to share, for those of you who have not seen the innovation playlist, I really encourage, this is kind of something that has inspired the Transformational Learning Group. And what we are kind of looking at to see what we can use and to inspire others and to move our island in a really positive direction. Within this website, there's a documentary that was produced in Hawaii, and it's only like an hour long, but this is where we kind of met Katina, for those of you who watched it. So if you haven't, I encourage you to watch it. And I will introduce Dr. Katina Soares is the principal of Molokai High School. And I will let her kind of share her pathway a little bit, because I think for me, watching the documentary and then the conversation with Ted Dintersmith, I found it really interesting to hear your own experience in school and how it then influenced you in where you are today and how you got there. So Katina, if you would like to introduce yourself and kind of share a little bit about your own educational experience, I think that would be really great.
Sure. And of course, they're going to mow our lawn right now. So I put my headphones on. And our whole island shares the Uncle Richard. He mows all the school's lawns. So I can't disrupt his schedule or I'll lose our spot until next week. So I have to let him mow out there. So just let me know if you can't hear and I'll repeat anything or if I'm too loud or soft. So I'm Katina Soares, yes. I'm the principal of Molokai High School. This is my 3rd year. And for me, so I was raised here from when I was 10 days old. I wasn't born here, but I was raised from a brand new baby. Went through public school most of my life. And then when I got to high school, and I was one of those type A overachiever students involved in everything, you know, straight A's, student council, athletics, all of it. And then life got a little bit difficult. There were some situations that happened. The major ones at the time, well, we were Molokai High and intermediate school, so the 7th through 12th at the time, a lot larger than it is now. It was like closer to 1,000 students. Now I only have about 350. But there was like a sex assault the same year. My mom was fighting breast cancer. We had like a foster child who had like a traumatic family situation in our house, and it was just a crazy year. And there was a lot of things going on at school, you know, like bullying situations. They would call it bullying now. Back then it was kind of just how it was. There's people, you know, kind of tormenting you. And I really wasn't, it didn't faze me before, but that year it was just like too much. It was pushing me over the edge. And I'm like, I'm just here to go to school. I don't want drama. I don't want to mess with everyone. And us being a small island, you know, the people who messed with me used to be my best friends in elementary school. So it was like that whole, you know, too close-knit community almost. So anyway, doing around, sorry. I left high school at 11th grade, and I actually got my GED. So I didn't graduate from this school because it was just so bad. Like every year, and it was the 90s when, you know, like everything was gangster rap and everybody wanted to be in a gang with their, you know, bandanas and everything. And so it was fights like almost every day here, and people trying to fight you, and it was just like too much. So, but when I left, I was like, I love school, you know, and I didn't want to leave, but I just felt like I had to for my own health. And so I vowed then, like, I'm going to come back and make this school better. Like, nobody should have to go to school and feel that way. And so I really did commit. I got my GED. went through college and got my degree in counseling, psychology, and then counseling, and came back to this school as a school counselor. I actually worked for Maui College. It was Maui Community College back then, but for 2 years first, and then I came up here. So I worked here for about 8 years as a school counselor, and just really tried to put in place some programs about, you know, safety, acceptance, belonging, all the things that we're talking about now. But kind of like someone else was saying, it was in the time of No Child Left Behind, when everything was just reading and math, reading and math, reading and math. And it was really difficult. Like SEL wasn't really a thing back then. It was like the thing that only the counselors did. And social emotional learning, sorry. We use a lot of acronyms in the DOE. And so it was really just me working up against the system. And you know, my administrator was supportive, but when it came down to it, it was like, we don't have time for that. We have to work on reading and math. And so what I realized then was, and we did make a difference. I should say, like, we had an amazing staff who would, you know, like we would just have picnics at lunchtime outside and give away candy. So kids would come talk to us as staff members and, you know, not be afraid, like try to build that community. And just having people, adults outside eating lunch as a picnic attracted students. Like we would play music and all of that, but it also alleviated some of the fighting and things like that. So it made other kids feel more safe. So I do feel like it was successful to an extent. So much so that I did send both of my kids here. They graduated from here in 2015 and 16. But I felt like I couldn't make the difference I wanted to as a school counselor. So I left to get my certification for principal. I felt like the only way I can make the difference that I want to make is by being in charge. So I left for a few years. I worked at Kuala Pu'u School, which is a charter school. That was really good because it taught me to teach a little bit outside of the system, outside of the box, and how you can push the envelope a little bit. Charter is all about making up systems if you don't already have everything set for you. So there is a lot of innovation there. Then I worked on Maui for a couple of years at Lahaina Intermediate, and then I came back here in 2018. So my goal was, first of all, to make school safe. Like that is my primary responsibility, and I feel like that's my passion and my purpose. But through the years of learning, going through my own college and different schools, it's so much more than that. Like school is not just reading and math. And so I've learned that I just want kids to feel valued. Our school in particular has been, like, if you look at the list, you know, like Honolulu Magazine or the ranking of schools for like 20 years from the last time I worked here, we've always been at the bottom. It's like us, Nanakuli, Waianae is like, we're always somewhere at the bottom. And it was like, when I worked here before, we had all these big name people coming in to do trainings with us. We were like almost under restructuring with these, you know, multi-million-dollar companies sending consultants to work with us. All of these strategies that were supposed to help us get better test scores, we moved like this much. And in the process, we're alienating kids hating school. The kids who thrive at, you know, hunting and fishing feel like, excuse my language, crap, because they're not that good at reading. And so for me, it was like, why are we just bringing kids to school to make them feel bad about themselves? They should be here to learn and want to learn. And so it was really just having that different perspective that it's not all reading and math, yes, is important. You definitely need to know how to read to survive, even with all of the technology we have now. But we're putting so much emphasis on that and throwing away all of these other things. And coming from Molokai, where we're, you know, advocates, some will say activists, some say advocates for, you know, like Aloha Aina and our natural resources. We have an island that's our classroom, and we're not using that. We're bringing kids into the school and trying to teach them these skills that don't necessarily translate out there. And so when I came in, I really just wanted to balance bringing out their other talents and other things that they're good at besides reading and math, and emphasizing those things and figuring out a way to tie the two together. So for me, I'm not that concerned with our test scores. Like, we're already at the bottom. We don't have much to lose by trying things. And so when I came in 3 years ago, we were coming in at a time when we were getting a new superintendent. Ted Dintersmith, if you've seen any of his work, is all about the small steps that lead to big change. And he was willing to work with our complex, and they were kind of like, who's willing to do it? And I was like, I will. We have nothing to lose. And I talked to our staff. I think one of the pluses for me was that I had worked here before. And so as most of the staff was still here, and so as a school counselor, they knew my heart. My heart was like for our kids. And so I didn't have to waste years trying to build that trust. They were just like, we know what you're trying to do is for our kids. And so they just went with it. And so everybody just jumped on board with what we were trying to do. And so we've tried lots of things. Some of the smaller things that we've tried, just for me, for instance, was mobilizing your community is a big one, but like having a mobile office. So instead of me having my principal's office here, I take my computer and go sit in the hallway and do my work, on my laptop, or I go sit in the cafeteria and do my work, so that you're interacting with the kids, see you, can talk to you, you're approachable. And you also get to kind of see what's going on without, you're just like not as intrusive, because you're not coming into their classroom and, lurking around. And another thing that I did that is from the playlist was shadowing a student. So if you go on the innovation playlist, you'll see that for me, it wasn't necessarily how you do it, but I wanted to just kind of infiltrate as a student. So I fully dressed up as a student, made the pigtails and everything, try to blend in as much as possible, my ripped jeans, and was a student for a day. And I actually did it several times. The one that you see on film is the third time. But I went with kind of a middle of the road student who was in athletics, middle of the road. Not in the big, most popular friends group. One time I did it with our AP students. Those are actually the ones that ended up in the video. They're two of our valedictorians. And then another time I did it with the special education student who also identifies as LGBT. So it was like this whole kind of different continuum of different types of students and their different experiences. So I dressed up as a student, came in, we told the kids, pretend I'm a new student, you don't know me. We told the teachers, pretend I'm a new student, you don't know me. And we just followed them around, like from lunch to their clubs. One student was a wrestler. I did wrestling practice, which was like terrible and exhausting. Like I literally almost threw up. But it was so amazing because it was one of those environments where you get to see kids who are struggling in math class, but in wrestling, they're the star of the show, and it was, and it built their respect for me by seeing me out there struggling, in wrestling, and you're a human. It allowed me the ability to talk to the kids on a different level. Like they're not looking like, oh, the principal wants to know about our school, So anyway, it gives you a really good lens of what the school is all about. And what you're supposed to do is like administrator do it, teachers can do it, but you also are allowed to have community members do it. So if your teachers feel safe enough with that happening, then you can actually have other people come in and see, what do they see and what's different than what they thought. But it's really just not being judgmental, just kind of, what do you see, good or bad? And so I learned a lot. One of the things I learned was that our students' days are really long, like really, really long. And before COVID, like we sit more now, but in that regular day, our kids sat for long periods of time. We have 70, at the time we had like 70 to 80 minute periods, and they'd basically be sitting there the whole time, just sitting and writing. And how boring. I'm sorry. I mean, that's what it was. And it's not engaging. It's not exciting. It's not celebrating anything. It's like a book and paper. And then I also saw some really awesome things. Some of the classes we were outside. So one of the science classes, we actually were at the farm and doing measuring. And then they sat down on the grass and talked about what we measured and how measuring this plot, they like took samples of different weeds and things and compared them. And, like how this plot and measuring might translate into the real world and all these ecosystems and everything. So there's different ways of learning, and sharing that with the staff kind of got them excited about what each other was doing. So Shadowing a student was one of them. And tell me if I'm talking too fast, or ask a question at any time, because I'll just go on and on. So that was one of them. And that, like I said, that was highlighted there. What's the other thing? I had some takeaways. Oh, one of the other takeaways, just as far as our school environment, was that I feel like everybody's friendly, but I'm an adult and I say hi to everybody. One of the students that I shadowed, who was not necessarily like the most popular, but a really nice kid, you know, no one had a problem with her, but they didn't say hi to certain people. It's like only the kids that you really know are the ones that you even acknowledge. And so that was something that surprised me, was how invisible they are to each other. Even though, you know, we're a small island, you probably went to elementary school with that person. So it's not necessarily to the level of bullying, but it's like not even acknowledging another human being that's right there. So that was just some of the things that I saw that was like, okay, we need to work on some of those things. So what was really exciting about just the whole experience of doing things like that was that the kids kind of got used to me being weird. So they, if I was sitting in the cafeteria with my computer, they're like, what are you doing today? You know, it was kind of like, what is the principal going to do now? And so it kind of just created that environment where we can have open dialogue about whatever. The other thing that we did that was featured, and I think was a huge, and we're just starting, so I can't tell you, you know, how much of a difference any of this is really making, but again, it's just the small steps. And we feel a shift just by the conversations. You may not see it in test scores or anything yet, but so the other thing that we did, which is I think in mobilizing your community, was we built with, it's called Mobilizing Your Community, but we built in our profile of a high school graduate. So I partnered with all of the other schools, and basically what I said to them was, at the end of the day, the high school basically gets the credit and the blame. So at graduation, yay, you know, our kids are great and good job, high school, but really it's all of us. Like it's from pre-K on, it's parents, it's all of us that, you know, the village to raise a child, and acknowledging that. So I asked them, can we do we have these P&C days, so like planning and collaboration days. Can we do those days together? And just have that conversation as an island, and included the charter schools and invited the private schools. And so what we did was we played the film, Most Likely to Succeed. So if you haven't seen it, it's, I would say, Ted won't like that I said it like this, but it's not the most exciting film, but it's interesting. So yeah, there's parts where you're like, oh, okay. But then by the end, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And anyway, the summary of it is that, you know, the world is changing so fast that education can't keep up. And how are we preparing our kids for jobs and careers that we don't even know, you know, are going to exist yet? And, you know, technology is changing so fast, we can't keep up and all of that. And so it really just is about instilling a sense of urgency in everyone that education needs to change, and that the way that we used to do school is not going to work anymore, and it really hasn't been working. And so for us, so that was kind of our jumping off point too. We showed it to all our staff, like custodians, teachers, basically all the school staff. And then we invited charter schools, private schools, and all of them. And we watched the movie together, and then we gave feedback. And we discussed like what knowledge, skills, and dispositions would you like to see from a Molokai graduate? So it wasn't a Molokai high school graduate. It was just a child is done school on Molokai. What do you want them to be able to know and do? And so that was basically the gist of the discussion. And people were really excited about it. We did that during the day. Then at night, we got a generous donor to fund dinner for community. And each principal was in charge of inviting 10 people from the community to come to this dinner. And so we did a variety. So it was like politicians, some of our outright activists. We invited Kupuna, we invited all of the Native Hawaiian organizations, we invited schools, educators to the college, we invited clergy. So just basically, we've invited some businesses. So just a good sample of different organizations and stakeholder groups on our island. And so they came to dinner, we kind of explained what we were trying to do, and then we watched the movie again, and then did the same type of feedback session with them. So that was like our first initial just gathering what characteristics they would like, and just kind of setting the stage for school at Molokai High School is not going to look the same. So don't freak out when it starts to look different. And so that was 3 years ago. So last year, we gathered information. I got with the other principals. We also did outreach, like sit in front of the grocery store and ask the same questions, like, what would you like to see from a graduate? What's important to you? We have Punanaleo holds a big Ho'omau event with a concert, and like most of the island comes. Sometimes people fly in. So they gave us a free booth, and we gathered information that way. And it was good because it was just, a non-intrusive booth with just like, hey, Mauni now, like, what questions do you have? And then the principals were there, and they were able to fill out a survey or give us, written responses and just talk story about what school is and what's important to them. So we did those different type of outreach things. Instead of just come to the school to this presentation, we really tried to get out there. And so through all of that, that took probably through the next year. Then we had a draft ready. So we took everything and compiled it, looked for trends, and we narrowed it down to about 10 of these characteristics. And so the next year, and this has been occurring in January, every January is when our combined day is with all of the schools. So we presented it to the staff, got some feedback from them, and then did the same thing with a community event. We showed a short portion of some of the documentary the film that they had been shooting at our school. And so it was incorporating things from our island and showing them what differences we're already seeing and things that we're doing differently at our school, and then giving feedback on the narrowed down characteristics. And then so we took those again and narrowed it down further and kind of defined what they would look like. And so this January we presented the final version, and then we actually showed all of our staff the innovation playlist film that you saw. So it's kind of like just get people fired up again and circle back to, okay, now we actually have our profile. Now what are you going to do with it? And that was our call to the community as well. It was like, this is what you said you want to see. How can you help? And so at the end of our presentation was them giving us contact information or how they can help. So some are offering, this is pre-COVID, of course, offering internships, job opportunities, funding, things like that. So we built partnerships with our community to help our kids get there. And some of them, like guest speakers, I'll come in and talk to your kids about, career or how I run my business and things like that. And what was interesting, some of the things from our profile, shucks, I should have brought it up. I can send it to you later. But I know one was Aloha Aina. Another one was a sense of belonging. And under that was like Hawaiian culture, language, and all of those specific things. Another one was financial literacy. So just being independent and knowing those types of things. And those aren't skills you would necessarily learn in school, in a traditional school. So now our goal is, how are we going to teach these skills, so this was just, a few weeks ago that we shared the final draft. And so now we're discussing it as like, that's our North Star. Everything that we do should be aligning to these characteristics. And if it's not, then do we really need to be doing it? And so that's kind of where we're at, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, so we're still kind of in the process, but yeah. You have questions?
So that was awesome. Thank you. I feel like I'm gonna go sit outside of KTA and ask you all the questions. So, because I love, the profile of a graduate. I just feel like that's such a powerful tool. When you go back then to the drawing board and say, okay, now what decisions are we going to make about curriculum and policy and, based on what you told us, right? It's not the school telling the community, this is what we're going to do and this is what's best for you type of approach.
Yeah.
So we have some questions, but I'm open to anybody asking questions. Our team kind of brainstormed some things at our last meeting, but
Okay, I do want to share just one other quick thing, just about our school, just a little background. So we're a small school, right? 350 kids. And we also we're a school within a school, so we have a Hawaiian immersion program as well. So that was why we do have, and for us, the only language that we offer is Hawaiian. We have a full line of Hawaiian language. If you want to take anything else, it's going to be online. And for us, one of the things that was most important is our island is 80% Native Hawaiian. So it's important that that's part of our culture and curriculum. And we're trying to tie a lot of what we do into that, because you can feel that. And it's important to our kids and our community. And so that was one of the ways that we're tying everything together. You know, science can be tied into navigating a canoe and, you know, growing taro. And so we're the farmers. We're rebuilding, you know, building up our farm again. And so anyway, that was just one of the things I wanted you to know. The another thing is, because we're such a small school, funding is really tight. And so we're not able to do a lot of the fancy things that other schools can. So everything we do has to be efficient, it has to be value added, and it has to be meaningful, basically. If it's not, it's fluff that we really can't afford money-wise and just in time. And then the other thing is, one of the difficulties for us is that other schools are able to have more vast experiences with internships and opportunities and things like that that we can't. So we really have to get creative in those types of opportunities. Like our kids can't, you know, if they're interested in medical, they can't go work at a big hospital. Like we have one small hospital and a couple of small clinics. Or, you know, some kids are interested in auto mechanics. Well, we're down to one place that, you know, has an auto shop. And so the opportunities are limited. But the goal for me is that we prepare our kids to live on or off the island. That's what I would like to do, is for them to figure out and solve the problem of how they can go and come back and survive and thrive. It's not for me to solve. For me, it feels like I need to give them the skills to figure out how to solve that problem. But I want our kids to be prepared for whatever they choose. And if they want to live here, can they figure out a way to live here and thrive and be successful with our limited economic opportunities? So anyway, that was just like a little more background. Now you can ask questions. Sorry.
No, I love that, because I remember that coming up before, this idea, because I feel like Hawaii Island has the same thing that goes on in a lot of ways. It's a rural community.
Yeah.
And the priorities of the DOE on a federal level are often not the same priorities that we really have here locally. And we want our kids to either stay here and have the skills, either as entrepreneurs or, you know, problem solvers, to figure out where there's a place for them, where there's a need that they want to create their own job, essentially, right? To do, or go with, right? Either one.
Yeah, and we don't, you probably know, but we are not open to tourism as, you know, the biggest industry here. So very limited in the amount of tourism that people allow. And then just another thing about our community that is not that positive is that there is a culture of underachievement. We have, you know, and it kind of goes with just the economic opportunities are not really there, but we do have a high number of people, you know, on welfare and who are okay with never having a job. So that's something else that we're always up against and working against, is even finding value in being self-sufficient. So like on paper, you know, that's what the community is telling us. We want our kids to be independent and take care of themselves and all of that. But then there's this kind of underlying culture of that's not really how we're behaving though. So yeah, we're just kind of up against this our own oppressing culture that we have for ourselves here. So yeah, a lot of work to do.
I have a question. So bringing that up about how the like how you're mentioning that people are fine with not working and just accepting federal help, government help. Are you trying to also work with the parents? I mean, I know you have community, but there's also always parents that just rather just sit at home and just not participate in anything. Are you trying to also pull them out so their children will understand or know that, okay, although my parents are fine with not working, that's not the path I want to take? Because I know some kids that they're just like, well, what, if my parents can live off of welfare, they're doing fine, I'll just do the same thing. And it becomes that vicious cycle. So are you trying to pull the parents into their children's education somehow to try to bridge that gap?
Well, always. I think even at the high school level, can be really difficult to engage parents. And part of it is because the kids don't really want them around either. But we're partnering with other organizations. So like Liliuokalani Trust is one of them. We have an MOA with them, and pre-COVID, we have one this year, but they actually have an office on our campus. And so they are kind of one of our bridges to families. And so they take our kids after school and do supports with them, and they can do kind of case management off campus that we aren't able to do as a school. But no, like as far as targeting families, no, we try to do, like I said, like go into the communities. I know that for parents whose school wasn't a positive place, like we do actually have slightly higher number of special education students than most schools as well. And so, we have parents who are struggling learners themselves, and school is not a positive place for them. So we do try to do a little bit more outreach probably than other schools do. Like we'll go to your house pre-COVID and meet with you rather than making you be uncomfortable or come to school. Or we'll have meetings down at another place in town rather than making you come to the school. But other than that, not really. But in doing the profile of a high school graduate, like I was saying, if you ask them what they want for their kids, they're not going to say they want them to live off the system. They're going to say that they want them to be independent, and thrive and take care of themselves and all of these things. They want better for their kids. They just don't know how to do it. And their actions, like I said, may not align with that. So I think as long as they're saying it and their kids hear them saying it, that's a positive. The other thing just for me is, again, with like the talents, is having the kids believe in themselves and building that confidence in things that may not be reading and math, to make them feel like they can achieve something and be successful. And then hopefully that'll continue into adulthood. But no, nothing specific to families for us.
Does anybody else?
Mahalo for sharing. Can I ask another question about the internships? So we asked our businesses as well, because Honoka'a is a small town as well. And so we've identified that students were wanting to do internships and businesses wanted to do internships. But were you doing any work, or how did the businesses were telling us that the students weren't ready? Because it is a lot of work for a business to take on an intern. So was there anything, or how did you pick interns to go to the businesses? Did you train them or anything like that?
So we actually, we're still building that program. So it wasn't really big. One of the more successful ones was Made in Maui Festival. And so it's smaller entrepreneur businesses here that will take on one or two students, and then they work, like, for example, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I can't think of it right now. Sorry. But anyway, we have a couple of clothing companies that our kids will go and work in their shop. And then for them, the incentive is that they get to go to Maui and go to this, the Made in Maui Festival, and help sell and all of that. But they have to go through a whole interview process. So everyone is not afforded, just because you want to, we'll let you go. They have to interview. They have to, give us good reasons why. They have to be in a certain career pathway. So we try to match them with something that they're interested in doing after high school. And then that way, but we definitely do have some businesses that are like, no, or they've tried and, you know, our kids haven't impressed them. And then they're like, no, that's too much work. We're not here to babysit, you know. We were also lucky to have an opportunity. Our Visitors Association had some funding. And so they set up some opportunities for our kids to go. It was like day experiences at different businesses. So it wasn't like a traditional internship, but an adult from the school. Our agreement was that a teacher would go with them. And so they worked at the hotel for one day. And then they worked, shucks, I can't remember. Sorry, it's like COVID brain. But anyway, they went to these different places and worked for a day with paired with supervision from our school. So that was kind of one of our workarounds for that. The biggest issue for us is, and going into next year, is how to build it into our schedule. We're trying to figure out a way that they can take off either like on Fridays or a certain day to do that, and kind of tier their interning. So like 9th grade, they would just start with like field trips, you know, with supervised field trips to visit different sites. And then, you know, as they get older, then you're old enough to drive, like you just go drive and work at this place and, you know, hopefully get paid or something like that. But yeah, it's not easy. Not all of our kids are work material yet.
Yet. Mahalo. Thank you for sharing.
I wanted to ask if there isn't anybody with a pressing question, I wanted to ask what some of the barriers have been for you in doing this, whether, you know, in getting buy-in from your teachers, getting buy-in from parents, because when we've talked to, you know, principals and teachers, there's a lot of, you know, they feel like what is required for them to do and what maybe this suggests that they do might conflict, right? And so, yeah, if you could speak a little bit to that, how people are working with those conflicting kind of responsibilities.
Sure. So I think I said earlier, as far as like the trust factor, that part was a little bit easier for me because I worked here before. So and I'm very blessed that most of my staff, like I said, like we're a small island, we're a community, whatever, you know, what benefits our kids benefits our community. So I haven't had a problem getting people on board. Most of our teachers, like, they genuinely love their jobs and they love the kids and are willing to do what they need to do. But the other part of it is, and let me say this, there were several of us that were given the opportunity to work with TED, and, you know, some of them were like, I don't want to do, you know, put in the work. So I think part of it was definitely me modeling, like, I'll do it. Like shadowing a student, like I'll put myself out there and whatever. It's embarrassing, it might be to some people, but whatever, I'll do it. But the other part was just providing them time and funding, so like resources in order to do it. I think a lot of people want to do things, but they have so many responsibilities already that it's just too much, and so they really can't do it with fidelity and give the time and attention to actually make a difference. So for us, we were really lucky, you can call it luck, I don't know, but we're a Title I school. And so I've devoted most of that money to these types of efforts. So paying for, if it's substitutes, like the teachers need time to plan for something, then you can have a substitute. Or I prefer, because I don't want them out of the classroom, I prefer stipend. So like if you guys will work on a Saturday to plan this for our kids, then you'll get paid. So I don't, you know, our teachers work enough, and I try to give incentives and compensate whenever we can, so that, yeah, there's really no excuse. Like, here's the time or here's the money to do it. The same with resources. So if they need materials for something like that, like for us on the innovation playlist, one of the discussions is project-based learning. And so we've spent a lot of our time and money on doing that because it's a value-added program. It allows kids to work on things that they're interested in. it allows them to prepare for a career, but they also have to do reading and writing and speaking and, you know, all of these things all in one. And it's not just sitting there and doing math or just sitting there and doing science. It can be combined together. So you touch on all of these subjects by doing this one project. And it also has the value added by, you know, it's like community service project, or how are you going to make the world better, or how are you going to help our island or kupuna or something like that. So there's just, it's value added. So we've been focusing on project-based learning for the last 3 years. And so Title I has paid for training. And then I requested a waiver. So like this school year, we actually had 6 less school days. So days without students at all. And the teachers are just working on planning these projects, training on these projects, and getting them ready for students. And so that's what I'm saying, like giving them the time. And so for me, and I always tell them, like, we're going to take these days, everybody better be here, because we are taking the time away from our students. So it needs to benefit them in the end. And so we have. And so nobody's had a problem with it because they have that dedicated time. Whereas, you know, if it was a sub day, they would have to do sub plans. And then, you know, we have a few like really awesome subs, but nothing compares to having the real teacher in the classroom. So for me, it's kind of a lost day anyway if we have substitutes. So I'd rather just do it as a waiver day so we can focus on what our kids need to do. I'm trying to think. Those are the 2 major barriers, is just the resources part and the time. We also, like in COVID, we built our schedule around, it's kind of weird, but we built our schedule around giving more time. So this school year, the students only had 1 class and 1 credit to work on first quarter. And then quarters 2, 3, and 4, they have 2 classes. So they spend an hour and a half a day in each class, and that's all. So our school doesn't start till 9:30. And we end at a little after 2 for this school year, because we were trying to do what was best for our kids. So they can speak with the teachers and work on with the teachers one-on-one before 9:30, but the actual class time is really short. And every day they have advisory for 1 hour. So advisory is where they work on, they can have tutoring, they can work on college and career skills, they can work on their reading or math support, but they also do fun things. That's when student council will plan like student activities for them, or they'll do a class bonding, or it can be fun things too, social emotional things, team building things, just talk story time with your teacher, you know. So advisory is a class of maybe 10 or less students with 1 teacher. And it's not only teachers, like our counselor has one, our librarian has one. So everybody is assigned to this group of kids that they follow for 4 years. And so that's another way, like we're trying to build a sense of belonging. And I believe advisory is in the innovation playlist as well. But we used to only do it 45 minutes. And this year, because of COVID, it's an hour. And for us, that's also our check-in. We make sure you're responsible for like a case manager for these 10 kids. Are they checking in their classes? Are they passing? You know, do they have Wi-Fi when we were just completely virtual? Like, are they able to access the curriculum? And then if not, you know, they're kind of the ones who would report to us, and then we'll go drive out and get them materials or things like that. So that was kind of another little innovation, was the schedule. So that's something else, you know, that can be a barrier, but if you can figure out how to switch around the bell schedule to best address the needs of your kids at that particular school, that's a huge shift. And COVID has allowed us, lifted some of the restrictions. Otherwise, like for next year, we're probably going to have to ask for a waiver to have our schedule be weird again. And we're learning a lot. Like even that is just trying. We're finding that the quarter is too fast. So we're probably going to stretch it out to, some schools already have block schedules. So you do a class in a semester rather than a quarter. Was just too much, too stressful. Anyway, so that's another barrier. People always are like, I don't have enough time, but you can manipulate the time to make it work. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. try things. Just gotta try. Nothing to lose for us. We have nothing to lose. You know, if you're like a stellar blue ribbon school, you might not want to do some of this stuff. And honestly, that's what I came across. Like when I was in the principals program, I was paired, I won't say which school, but a really high-end school where all the parents, it's a public school, but they're in a more affluent area on Oahu where all the parents are like pushing their kids to achieve, and you're going to college and they have all this support at home. And that principal is like, I don't know if I want to, mess with anything, because what if their test scores go down and, I messed it up. And it was like, I don't know what to tell you. I have nothing to lose. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much pressure on teachers to get all of this content in.
Yeah.
And it drives, so I have a 10-year-old son, and right now I feel like it's a test of my patience, because so much of what they're doing, I think, is just busy work and not meaningful. My son wanted to talk about COVID, and he wanted to talk about the election, and he wanted to talk about, and they didn't touch any real, there's a lot of issues right now,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And that was part of, so just when our school was closed last year, I think, just speaking to like project-based learning and how that helped, because of COVID and we're closed that last quarter, what all of our teachers did was they met together and came up with kind of I don't want to call it tic-tac-toe, but a choice board of things that you could do. So interdisciplinary projects. So you can do, these 3 that will cover your math, science, and whatever. Or you can do these 3 and these will cover this. So they got to choose big issues. So that's when like Black Lives Matter, was out. And so some of them chose to do this huge anti-racism project. Some of them chose to do like, other projects with like on fishing or something like that was relevant to them. But they could cover all of these components based on something that was interesting to them. So that's kind of one of the pluses of the project-based learning, is the student choice and voice part. They don't get to choose everything, but you can choose from this menu and relate it to something that's important to you. So
I think that's huge. It's huge as far as student engagement, in their own learning. That's huge.
Katina, I love what you're doing. This is Lane. And I had a question about if you have tried not using bells. And the other question is, so what do you do with standardized testing?
Okay. And I just want to tell you that you look so familiar. I can't place you, but I swear we've met before or somewhere. Yes. I don't know where. I mean, I was on Maui for a couple of years, so maybe it was then. I don't know.
That probably was.
Yeah, I don't know. St. Anthony cross country race. I don't know. But, so yeah. Sorry, what was your question again? I got distracted.
I wanted to ask about bells. If you
bells. Okay.
Not using them, and then also standardized testing. And since I'm talking, there's a third thing. How do you evaluate your teachers?
Okay. So bells, no, I didn't, but Lahaina Luna did last year. That was they tried one of those innovation playlist items. I kept the bells because, well, partially because our campus is really big for small students, and it's just, it makes a mess of people trickling in and out everywhere. So I shouldn't say we tried not having bells, but our bell was actually broken, and then it didn't, because of COVID, they couldn't fly someone over, so we had to manually ring the bell. So it was never the right time anyway. Sometimes people would forget, so it was kind of chaotic. But Lahaina Luna, I could ask them and follow up with you how it went, but they did the no bell, I believe, all last school year or before COVID. And then standardized testing, we haven't had it. We didn't have it last year. We're supposed to have it this year. I will say one of the things, and I'm honestly not brave enough to do it, but when I was a school counselor and everything was like testing, I was like, and my principal was close to retirement, I was like, what would happen if you just said we're not doing it? And then what would they do? Like, what are they gonna do? Fire you? You're almost gonna retire. And then for me, I was like, when I'm the principal, I'm just going to be like, we're not doing it, but I'm not quite that brave yet. Because, well, now I have a deeper understanding of it's not just us, it's a federal thing. And then, you know, like for us, we'll lose our Title I funding, which is really important.
Oh, yeah.
So yes. So standardized testing, yes, we're gonna do it, but I don't, we haven't been teaching to the test or anything like that. It's like, we just do it and it is what it is. We do say, you know, like it's important and, you know, get a good night's rest and all of those things for any type of test. We tell them that before they do their project presentations, but really it's more about the nerves than, you know, anything else. So I emphasize it in the sense that it's important and it's it's one, we tell them it's a snapshot, one way that our school's kind of our report card, and just do your best. And, you know, if you don't know, we don't know. But yeah, we're gonna do it because we have to. And then what was the third thing you asked about?
On teacher evaluation, what's the method?
Oh, yeah.
For that?
So we're required to do the educator effectiveness system. So EES is the state's system. And I'm probably one of the outliers in that I actually feel like theoretically it's a good system because it allows for conversations to happen. It forces me to make sure that conversations are happening. It forces me to make sure that I'm in the classroom and knowing what's going on. And, you know, just it's kind of a check and balance system. So I know some other people who don't like it because they feel like we're just forced to do it, but I appreciate it because of the component. So it requires us to meet with the teachers at least twice a year. Like, what are you planning on doing this year? How are you going to work with our kids? How are you going to help them to grow? How are you going to grow professionally? And it facilitates those conversations that otherwise you might be like, I'm too busy to sit down with every teacher and talk to them about that. Like, we just need to get moving. So it makes sure that you have those relationships and those discussions. And then the second part is that it requires classroom observations. So you have to actually go and make sure, you know, what they're teaching is having an impact. And again, as part of that, it requires a conversation before and after the observation, and talking to teachers about how they might improve their instruction. So I feel like it's valuable, and we do it, and we do it with fidelity. I only can speak for our school, but it's because I value those conversations. And yeah, so
how do the teachers react to that system?
Our teachers are fine. Like, they do what they need to do. I would say, especially this year in COVID, I think everyone would have been just like with the state testing. It's kind of just like, why are we even doing it? You know, we're still trying to get some kids back into school. And the same with the teacher evaluation. It's like, we're evaluating them on a situation way beyond their control. So, you know, they've made some adjustments to it this year. They've definitely relaxed on some of the requirements, but anyway, so they have to still do it. But again, I appreciate the ability to get in the classroom. The bummer part about it this year is that in the teacher evaluation, we can't observe them virtually, and most of our kids for most of the year so far have been virtual. So yeah, so it's like they have to either be face-to-face in the classroom, which we are now. I think somebody else said they're face-to-face. It was Brianna. We're face-to-face also. So we can, you know, our kids are back on campus and we can see them. But yeah, it was just kind of a little less useful this year for sure.
Of course. Are teachers involved in setting their own goals?
Yes. Yeah. So there's like different
help with that. Setting the goals.
Sorry, say again.
Requires professional development. What kind of support do they get?
So it depends. There are actually 5 different levels they can be on depending on their tenure, and then they're on cycle or off cycle. So there's different levels of things that they have to do. At the very minimally, statewide, we have a survey called Panorama. That's a student perception survey on, like, is the school safe? Do I feel like I belong? All of those types of things. Does my teacher does the teacher care about me? Things like that. So the kids answer these questions and then the teacher will get that feedback. and that's done school-wide. So they have to reflect on that information. They're not penalized on it, but they have to look at it and reflect on it. And then they also have to do a professional development plan. So that's the minimal, that's the least they do. And then on the other end, normally a teacher will have to be observed at least twice during the school year. And if they don't pass it, they have to do it again. And so they have to get a certain rating in order to pass. And then they have to do some type of plan on how they're gonna, they have to do some type of baseline, and then they have to show how they're gonna teach students these certain skills by this certain amount of time. So how are you impacting student achievement? They have to do that. And then they also have to do a reflection on their student, the perception survey. So that's kind of the higher end, and it's a little more involved because there's meetings in between all of that. That's what takes a lot of time, but I also, like I said, I feel like that's valuable. But they get feedback before and after from an administrator on how they're doing.
I can see why they like you.
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised. I'm kind of a stickler on those types of things. Like, I'm like, yeah. But I do encourage them to do value added things too. It's like, we're working on project-based learning. Do your project on that. Like, don't invent some new thing over here. Do something that we're already working on. Then it'll be meaningful for you and meaningful for them, and you know, those types of things. But yeah, they still have to do it. Sorry.
I wanted to see if Rebecca or Brianna or Camilla had any questions. We have about 10, 12 minutes. Because I always have more questions, so I can only.
And I do want to say, like, as far as the innovation playlist, I do want to say that the one that you see now is the newest version. We were working on the pilot version, which didn't have all of the features that the new one has. So we didn't touch on every single one of the things that are available now, but just FYI. So.
Well, there's a lot there. So there's no way you touched on everything.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I think one question I have is for our transformational learning group and a lot of us in the education stream for Vibrant Hawaii, we're not part of the DOE system. We're not principals or teachers. And so we're kind of like more of the community members trying to find out how to partner or support, you know, and transform the educational system. I think Camilla's mission is to disrupt the system. So I think that's what we're about. So any thoughts that you might have about how we might go about it, you know, right? Not as a principal, like not someone who can run a school and make those decisions, but what can we do to come alongside schools and principals and teachers?
So I would say find some of the innovators, or we call like early adopters. They're the ones who will just try things. And there's one in every complex. So complex is like the smaller districts of the schools. Like on the Big Island, I know that you could talk to Kohala. We talk to them a lot. They're one of the other small schools. I'm trying to think where the other principal is from, but there's definitely ones in every community. And I would just question them. So I'll tell you straight what our superintendent said, not this year, but last year, was like, disrupt the system. Like, stop doing what you're doing, disrupt the system, be brave, be bold, and do it. And so we've been given permission to try things. So I would just ask them, you know, like that, like, what are you doing to interrupt the system? And how are we changing schools so that we're preparing kids for the jobs that we don't even know exist yet, you know, and asking those questions. Every school will have somebody who's kind of has that fire. And if you can find that person and latch on, I think that will make all the difference. I also know that parents, in my opinion and experience, have way more voice than even our teachers sometimes. So if, you know, parents are saying, we want this for our kids, then sooner or later the school is going to have to listen. But I do feel like most of our schools are open to change. And the ones, like I said, I was working with one of the higher end schools. It's not that they don't want to, they're just, afraid of the backlash of those who are just like, traditional learning, this is how I went to school, and I'm successful, so my kid has to learn just the way that I did. So yeah, that's what I would say, is just rally some troops, and gently at first, but just call them on. Your superintendent said do it, so what's happening at your school, in a nice way. And then I think maybe the complex area superintendent, so they're supposed to be talking, with the community. They might be another person who can point you in the right direction of a principal that you can work with, or teachers who are innovative. Another way, just kind of a side doorway, might be to sign on to different school accounts for Twitter. A lot of the schools post what's going on at their school, and then you can see which ones are doing some of the more innovative things. It's really exciting. Every school has something amazing that they're doing. It's crazy.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, we've been talking to Kohala folks. We've been talking.
Oh,
to
perfect.
and
Well, there
also
you go.
the complex area supervisor for complex area superintendent for West Hawaii. Yeah, so for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. Anyone else?
I don't want to call out Brianna, but since you are in the classroom, I'm just really curious, like, as a teacher, what would you see as being supportive from a community organization who don't want to overstep our bounds by telling people what to do by any means, but want to support people who are trying to do these things, both teachers, principals, whatever. And what would be a barrier for you in doing some of these things?
Thank you for asking me the question. As Katina was saying, I feel as a teacher that it's finding that person that has enough knowledge and appropriate status to influence what's going on at a school site. And at my particular school site, we just lost her to complex area. So for us, we're kind of in a regrouping scenario. We also lost that position at our school, so it won't be filled. Yeah, and so
did she become a principal on the west? Did she become principal on the west side? Is that who?
No, but
Okay.
Principal Blaber is awesome as well. Principal Blaber is awesome. She was my children's principal. I'm speaking about Adria Medeiros, who just moved into the literacy grant. She's running the literacy grant for East Hawaii.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Principal Blaber was one of the ones I was going to mention, but I couldn't think of what school she was at.
yeah, she was at Ke'au Elementary, and she just I believe she got moved to Kealakehe Intermediate. So
okay.
happy for her.
So we did some innovation things together, but she's another good one.
Yes. Yeah.
She's
Well,
awesome.
then we lost two. So yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So yeah, as a teacher, and I taught mostly in California, also in a school district and schools that really needed to turn around, and got a lot of money for academies and got a lot of money from Title I. All of these things were supported by the federal and state government and their initiatives. And so having someone that was willing to write the grants and take the initiative and get out there and spend the time finding the opportunities. She was able to put a team of 9th grade teachers together and create a cohort system that was focused on trauma sensitive education and becoming a trauma informed cohort of teachers to face that challenge that are everybody, but especially in our area, Puna schools, we do face a lot of that. And so yeah, she hired me knowing that was my focus. and connecting with students, having extremely amazing impact and positive relationships with kids first, and that those test scores and everything else came later. First, we got to get you here. We got to make you want to be here, and we, you know, have incentives for you. So barriers. I think our administrators have a lot on their plate right now, and I would be concerned that COVID might be a really great reason to not innovate at this moment, because even our staff is getting that don't rock the boat, just stay in your lane, just be quiet and do your job. Like, we're really getting that message right now. So yeah, I'm not an administrator, so I've never worn those shoes. I don't know what that is like. I've been a coordinator, but again, like, you're not in charge. So or I'm not in charge, so I can't speak to that. But that is one barrier that I would see, is just mindset of stay in your lane, know your role, stay back. We got this. We're doing this thing, and you're listening to us. That's kind of where we're at right now. Thank you.
It's really interesting because we've had, and I know we're almost out of time, but we've had those conversations about whether it would be best to go top down or bottom up, right? And my tendency is always bottom up, like work with teachers, and teachers, you know, kind of, or even community, and community pressure school, or, you know, kind of pushes. But I would love to do both, but anybody who has comments about that, I would love to hear perspectives.
Well, I'll just say while they're thinking, one of the comments that, is it Brianna or Brianna? I don't want to say it wrong, because I'm always Christina, Katrina.
Oh, I don't have a preference, so Brianna's fine. Brianna.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. So one of the things she was saying was the status part that I didn't mention, but I think it does have to be a teacher that other people respect. Otherwise, it's just gonna be like, oh, look at that weirdo, and then, you know, not try anything that they're trying because it just looks weird. So it has to be somebody they respect that has that status. I would say, and what worked for us, and it's a strategy we use all the time, is the food. Like, if you can get somebody to fund some food and just show one of the shorter videos, like the Sir Ken Robinson one, it's like 20 minutes. You don't have to show the whole Most Likely to Succeed film, just show a short one. There was another film, shoot, I can't think of what it's called. We showed it last year when we were rolling out the draft. It's not even our film, but it was one about Hawaii and how it's changing. It was kind of the same thing. Like, we have to learn how to sustain ourselves, and it was before COVID. But I can find that video and send it to you as well. But just something short that's kind of just the instilling the sense of urgency, and that getting people to want to be a part of it, and making them like, oh no, maybe my child isn't learning what they're supposed to, or what they'll need, and just kind of question. But I would say then you can get all of those stakeholder groups in at once if you can give them some type of, you know, food, or some kind of incentive to draw them. Another big one is like an event, tag onto, like we did onto the concert, somewhere where you can get them to come to something for another reason, and then kind of trick them into watching your video or presentation. But I mean, it works. It's less intrusive, and it's not like we're telling you to do this. It kind of makes them feel like it's their own idea after they watched it, like, oh, we got to do something. But anyway.
Are there any final questions? We're at time. I want to be respectful of your time and Katina's time. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel, you know, inspired and kind of ready to tackle creating change. For any of you who were guests with us today, please do let me know if you would like to join our transformational learning group, either through Janice or I just put my email in the chat, and let me know. And we're happy to send you updates and invitations. Yeah, because we'd love to have more perspectives and voices and support. All
I
right.
just want to say thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I love what you guys are doing. We need more organizations like this. So awesome. Kudos to you guys.
We'll see.
You're awesome, Katina.
I know. Thank you so much for taking this time and spending this time with us. It really was wonderful. And thank you everybody for joining us today. All right.
Take care. Be safe.
Thank
Mabuhay ho.
you. You too.